What's up everyone, welcome to another video, and this video I'm going to show you my speed DB10 run and just discuss like the mechanics of it and like how to build one. Alright, so I'll just do a few show you the runs as I discuss the strategies, right? So first up, pretty much the one unit that you can't really do this without is Galleon. Alright, so the reason Galleon is really important is because one, he does attack buff, and second, he does defense break. That's all in one unit, right? So normally you would have to have like two different units that provide this, and usually it's not going to be a DPS unit that, like a good DPS unit, single target burst that will be able to do it reliably, right? Because Galleon, both his first and third skill are 100% application rate on defense break. So like even Stella, who has defense break on skill 1, still not reliable enough because with max skills it's like I believe 75%. Alright. So Galleon like provides those debuffs, and he himself does decent damage, right? Even on a tanky build he does pretty decent damage. You can even build him towards having crit rate or attack on slot 4, even crit damage, and he can provide like additional damage to help kill the boss as soon as possible, right? But the most important thing for him to have is high accuracy, because the dragon still has pretty high resist. So you want to have as much accuracy as you can while making him the fastest unit on the team. Alright, he has to move first because in the ideal sort of speed sinking situation, he should be moving first, before or at the start of the fight of the dragon, like the boss. That way he maxes okay, so ideally he should be doing time to loot. Worst case scenario, hopefully he's doing skill 1. If he does skill 2, then that's sort of bad luck. Hopefully he'll violent proc and do something else, but the main aim is to get the defense break turn 1. That way all your DPS units can do as much damage as possible. Obviously they need defense break to do that, so that's why Galleon has to move first. Yeah, so he's pretty much irreplaceable for a speed run. For a normal run, he's not necessary, but it's nice to have still. But you'll find that pretty much any Dragon Speed 10 or Giant Speed 10 will most likely have a Galleon in it. In Giants you could probably get away with not having Galleon because you could probably run multiple illusions and not really need the defense break so much. But for Dragons, I've yet to see a Dragons run without Galleon, at least a speed run. If you don't have Galleon, I should say, then I would probably look towards just making a safe team. It's very even with Galleon, it's still a very unsafe run. Like my team occasionally will fail, and I think that's the same for most people. They'll probably try to most people will be able to get a team that's maybe 95% plus success rate, and that's good enough because they can run it so fast, right, compared to like a 2-minute team or something like that, which is 100% consistent. Oh, sorry, one second, let me just recharge and do another run. Alright, so after Galleon, then the next and most important unit is to have Verd. So with Verd, you can probably get away with not using him, but you probably need much better runes to actually do a speed run with him, right? So he's not as irreplaceable as Galleon, but he does make it much easier to do a speed DB10 run. Just because he gives your team so many extra turns that he sort of, I guess you could say, he reduces the chances of failing because he's giving you more chances to defense break, etc. And yeah, the dungeon speed lead is also very strong. Now, as for the DPS, right? So we've got the two support there. Those are the two support units. Although Verd, you would definitely need to build him as a DPS to make this run more safe. But I'll go into that a bit later once I show the runes. So with the DPS, you can use pretty much any DPS, right? Preferably water DPS because it's easier to rune them, and also if they're taking a hit from the dragon, which sometimes they have to take 1 or 2 hits, just because you can't stop the boss from moving, then at least because they're water, they'll take less damage because there's a chance that the boss will glance on them. And they're also easier to rune because you only need 85% crit rate to crit the boss. Since the boss is fire, then you get the elemental advantage. So it's easier to rune them because of that. Now, so Tarq is probably the most noteworthy unit here because he's farmable, right? And he does really good damage, and his skills are just really good for speed runs. I'll go into that a bit once I show his abilities. And he's easy to obtain. You can even use triple Tarq. I have seen runs that do that, but just keep in mind that if you're already ruining up like water DPS units for other purposes, so for example for me, there's the Teo there, right? Teo, I already give him really good violent runes, pretty much like my second best, if not the best, violent set, because I use him in PvP, right? Like for that reason, there's no reason to rune up a Tarq instead of him. I may as well use him as one of the DPS units, right? Stella, some people will use her in raids, which is fine. She can still work in dragons pretty well because most people will rune her towards about 81% crit rate for max crit on with Hua lead. But so that's already pretty close to the 85 cap, right? So if you can give her an extra, or if you can spare her an extra 4% crit rate, then she'll always crit the dragon boss already, and she can be used in raids and not really missing out too much, like in terms of like wastage in stats. Other units that you could use, pretty much any water DPS will work. I think Chow is a good safeguard like for most people, because the thing with Chow is he can pretty much solo the boss. Like if you can burst the boss down to like fairly low, he gets immunity, he wipes the rest of your raid. He probably won't kill a Chow because Chow is pretty. You'll probably build him pretty tanky. You know, if you give him like 30k HP or something, like with HP runes as his main stats, he'll still do probably as much damage as like an attack based one, but he's still really tanky, right? Because here, like, he won't take much damage from the dragon because of elemental advantage. So dragon won't hit him too hard. He can heal himself up as well. So yeah, he can pretty much solo the boss. So if the rest of the units can take him to the end, then that's like a really good insurance policy, right? I would say, as long as your runes are pretty decent, like you'll be at least close to 100% safe. I don't have a Chow, so I can't actually test it out. But from what I've seen of other Chows, like they do a lot of damage and they survive quite easily on the dragon. So alternatively, if you don't have like things like the Nat 4, Nat 5 units, you can use like multiple Tarqs. It's very common to use 2 Tarqs and 1 Stella, right? The reason to use Stella is to add an extra defense breaker. Like I feel that's better than running triple Tarq. But if you don't have the Stella, then you can run the 3rd Tarq instead, or maybe another, like any other unit that has a defense break would be nice. So going through the runes and just like how to sync them up as well. So Galleon, ideally he should be on violent. Offset doesn't really matter, but if you're using him specifically for dragons or speed runs, then fight would be the most ideal. It will be most efficient. It gives everyone attack power, so I mean that's adding a lot of attack power percent on an offset, right? It's really efficient. But if you need to use him for PvP, then you might want to use you probably be using Will or something like that. If your AO can allow for your Galleon not to have Will, then even better. You can give him fight still. That's for probably for the people who are using speed offenses. So if they're using like Bernard to be their attack bar booster, then Galleon should move straight after. So you don't really need Will on him if you're doing that, and therefore you could use fight. And I rune him accuracy on slot 6 just so that there's like the best chance possible to defense break the boss. And obviously you want to be max skilled if possible. You don't have to max the second skill. Even like in the ideal situation, if you can, don't give him the cooldown reduction. I would say, because I would prefer Galleon to be using backspin slash, because max skilled it's 100% defense break, and that's the like. It's sort of like having Verd, where you don't really want Verd to use his second skill. You want him to attack bar boost with his first skill, right? For me, I feel it's the same for Galleon. It's better to for him to be doing defense break more often. Although for PvP purposes, the second skill is pretty good. So I guess it depends on like, I guess whether you could spare a second Galleon for PvE purposes. If you can, then hopefully your second skill is not maxed. Also, my one is a tanky build, right? I've got HP on slot 4, but if you're making a team just for dragons, like a Galleon mainly for dragons and PvE, it's better to give him like a DPS rune on slot 4. So either crit damage, crit rate, or attack. All of them would be fine. I would prefer either crit rate or attack, just for more consistent damage. But crit damage is fine too if you have really good substats on it or something like that. But only put crit damage if you can give him a decent amount of crit rate. Alright, so next up is Stella. So Stella for me is the next fastest unit, alright? Ideally she'll be on Violent, but for Dragons B10. But if you are ruining her for raids, you probably don't want to put her on Violent. She can still work on Swift, but I feel it's probably safer to put her on Violent, just so that there's more chances for her to use defense break as well, and also her doing her third skill more often is pretty good because it's reducing the dragon attack bar, which is this skill, right? So it decreases the attack bar, like it slows him from hitting you, and it does a lot of damage as well. But for Violent, you probably need pretty good runes for that. You can give up speed for it, it's fine. You don't need her to be like 200 plus speed. You can give her like 180 speed, and that's still fine as long as it's synced towards your like the rest of your units. And she's good because she does branding on second skill, which is quite nice as well. So she has good debuffs, good damage, and yeah. But she has to be max skilled pretty much to make her really good for this boss. You could probably get away with not being max skilled, but obviously having more skills is going to be safer, right? So I guess it would depend on your runes as well. Alternatively, you can also give her fight runes. So fight rune on her offset could be nice too, if you're running Swift. Or you could run her on triple fight. That could work too, because that's giving the whole team really good attack power boost. Just the main thing is you want to get her to 85 crit rate, preferably crit damage slot 4 with the 85 crit rate, speed slot 2, and then as much speed as you can while still giving her a decent attack. Alright, so next up would be for me it's Tor, but if you're running double Tarq, then the 2 Tarqs will move after this. So these are my Tor stats. He's on Violent, and just one thing to note: if you have 6-star runes on your um, odd slots, so 1, 3, 5. So for example, this slot, right? If you have a 6-star rune, I feel it's worth maxing the rune, right? Every little bit of attack will help, right? Even the defense and HP is not bad because you still have to take some hits. So like the better your stats, the more chance of survival, right? And especially for slot 1, which is a flat attack, even though it's a very small amount, every bit of damage helps speed up the run, and also the more damage you're doing to the boss, the easier it is to kill the boss, right? So don't be afraid to max it if it's 6-star. If it's 5-star, I might not bother with it because I feel you could probably look for a better rune. Once you find like a good rune that's worth keeping long term, then go ahead and 6-star it. Right, so that's Tor's runes. So one good thing about Tor is he's got like attack speed slow on AoE, or at least on his cleave, right? So his main target, which will be the dragon, won't get slowed, but anything he AoEs will get slowed. So that's nice for the towers, but most Tors probably won't have very high accuracy, and I don't really recommend giving him accuracy because you want him to do burst damage. But he can randomly do slow on the right tower, and that will make it easier. So that's like if you happen to have Tor, it's a really strong unit for dragons. Alternatively, if you don't have a Tor, you can use Spectra, which does a very similar, it fulfills a similar purpose. Spectra's burst damage is not as good as Tor's, but he's farmable, and he does slow on the third skill. I don't know if I have a Spectra here to show. I believe it's probably in my storage. I'll discuss him a bit later. Like I'll show his skills a bit later. But he does good burst damage on the boss, which is his second skill, and he also does the slows on the towers, as well as a chance to push back the attack bar. So he's a good sort of like F2P replacement for Tor. Otherwise, you can also use Tarq instead. So going next to Tarq, so Tarq has to move after your main nukers, right? So any nukers that are using cooldown based abilities like Spectra or like Tor, Stella, etc. You want Tarq to move after that because the third skill is Group Hunt, which is like a team up for 2 allies. So if he brings along Tor, then he'll refresh a cooldown, alright? Because it counts as him moving and attacking. So especially this is really nice for Tor because he's got a 2-turn cooldown on Squall, which does which is his massive burst damage, right? So if he reduces the cooldown, then he can he can Squall the following turn again. So that's pretty strong. Also same for things like Spectra. You can do the third skill more often, or the second skill, which is the burst damage. And bringing your defense breakers like Stella or Galleon will mean that there's an extra chance to defense break, which is quite nice. And if you bring Verd, then Verd will push the attack bars as well. So this is a really strong unit for DB10 speedruns because of this ability. But he doesn't just stop there. He does really good damage with his second skill, Ambush. This scales with speed, which is quite nice. Although you don't actually need to run him on like really fast runes, right? So, but you will give him a bit of speed, so it's nice that he scales all that too. And his first skill is like a generic DPS ability. He does do pretty decent damage with it though. But these are his runes. So he's on Fight Blade Broken. Ideally, I'll give him another fight set or triple fight even. But I don't have enough fight runes for that. The reason is because he doesn't need to be on Violent, right? If you can give him really good stats on Violent, then go ahead. But most people probably can't spare the Violent runes for a DB10 or like a speed run specific unit, right? So I think a lot of top players instead will opt to give Tarq like broken sets or just any non-violent set, right? He can work with anything. So I feel ideally triple fight would be really nice, since he doesn't really need the violent. Also, another note is he's on attack slot 2, and I feel that that's better than speed slot 2, even though he does scale of speed, because of the speed sinking, he can't be too fast, right? So it's better to give him more damage, and just give him like some speed substats to push him up, because his base speed's very high, 115, so he scales a lot from the Verd speed lead and also your tower. So keep that in mind when you're trying to speed sync your units. If my Tarq was like 10 speed faster, or actually maybe not 10, maybe like 20 speed faster, then he'll probably outspeeding other units. Alright, so that's Tarq, and lastly Verd. So Verd, I feel he should be on Violent, right? Because he benefits a lot from the extra procs. If you can't give him Violent, then it's still fine. You can give him Fatal or Rage or Fight Runes as well. Ideally, I feel Violent is best. Now, you'll notice that I have slot 2 attack percent. That's also deliberate, similar idea to Tarq. I want Verd to move last, right? Because the reason is because he needs to move last so that everyone else has moved, and that means he can boost the attack bars of them again. That way, you're not really wasting his attack bar boost, right? So everyone's moved, the attack bars are all pretty low again. I can boost the attack bar with Verd, and they'll move again before the boss moves, right? Now, as for his stats, like you want to build him as like a DPS. So try to give him some good crit damage substats and attack percent substats. That way, hopefully with time to loot, Verd will one-shot the crystals as you're doing the trash waves. If you can one-shot them, that will speed up the run. So if you can't give him Violent with good DPS stats and the correct speed, then you can try to give him like Fatal or Rage to make up for the DPS. As for his skill ups, make sure that the second skill is not maxed, because you want him to be using the first skill most of the time, especially on the dragon boss. Even though the second skill does do a lot of damage, it's not really worth for him to use it too often, right? So if you get to a point where you're 4 out of 5 on the second skill, stop putting skill ups into him, right? Stop feeding him any more vampires. Alright, so that pretty much covers all these common units. Before I finish up, I'll just show you Spectra's abilities, just to discuss him as the sort of the replacement for Tor. Alright, so here he's got Backlash, which is similar to the Crush, right? Except this one also reduces the attack bar of the boss itself and slows him, which is quite nice. Slowing the boss and also the tower gives you a lot more time to damage the boss. So for that reason, if you're using Spectra in DB10, I would recommend giving him Violent, right? He doesn't need to, because you want him to move after Galleon as well, or ideally, because just in case he uses the second skill, Special Assault, this will deal damage proportionate to the dragon's HP, right? So this is what does a big amount of burst damage. So if he does use this ability, you want him to be moving after Galleon's time to loot. But ideally he would use Backlash. It doesn't matter that he's like a bit slower than Galleon. As long as he does put the slow on the tower, you have a lot of time to damage the boss. And also, if you're gonna rune him for dragons, you want to give him crit damage slot 4, and try to give him max crit rate. So usually you have to give up a bit of speed to get him to max crit rate anyway. But yeah, that's how I would rune Spectra against the dragons, because he doesn't have the elemental advantage, so he has to have 100% crit rate. If you can't give him max crit rate with crit damage slot 4, then just give him crit rate slot 4 and try to give him crit damage substats and make up for it that way. Violent is preferred because his AI is very bad, so if he does backlash, if he doesn't do backlash turn 1, at least he has a chance to violent proc and do it next turn. Right, so that pretty much covers speed DB10. If I missed anything, if you have any questions, feel free to ask and I'll answer in comments. So I hope this helps you out. Just keep in mind that doing a speed DB10 is very difficult, right? The rune quality that you need is quite high. You can probably try to make up for it with aura runes. So try to craft fight runes, right? These are like what will help you with the fight a lot more, because it's providing 7% attack percent to everyone. So in total, that is 35% attack percent, right? Spread across 5 units. So it's very strong for a 2-piece set. And I feel the fire and the light dungeon raids are fairly easy to do. So in a future video, I might do like a specific video on those 2 raids, and hopefully if you can craft some of these, that will definitely help you do speed DB10 a lot easier. Alright, so that's it from me. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.